According to the National Emergency Coordination and Operations Center in the Office of the Prime Minister (OPM), large areas of the Mount Elgon Ranges are inhabitable owing to susceptibility to a myriad of climate-related risks. The highland districts of Bududa, Mbale, Kwen, Manafa and Sironko are prone to land and mudslides, while the lowlands of Namaingo, Namutumba and Palisa experience intermittent flash floods and droughts. It is for the same reason that the sub-region during the last decade has attracted millions of dollars of climate financing for disaster risks mitigation and adaptation, although precise figures are difficult to come by. Afforestation and reforestation are the commonest interventions undertaken, particularly in the highland districts. Conversely, there is growing appetite, both public and commercial, for tree planting activities across the country, fueled by, among others, the potential demand for timber and climate change adaptation programs, including the opaque carbon markets. The carbon market, since taking off following the Paris Agreement in December 2015, has, among others, propelled a myriad of interventions, from cash for tree planting to clean cooking initiatives to renewable energy such as solar, in the quest for gradual reduction of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide. Until 2016, Beatrice Mutonyi was fully conscious about the benefits of trees, but did not see reason to plant any around her home and small farmland in Kitimolowa village, Nyondo sub-county in Mbale district.
We had an NGO which came to our sub-county talking about the planting of trees. So farmers, we went there, we organized our group, 36 members. They trained us how to plant trees and how can we benefit in those trees.
In no time, she had caught the drift of tree planting.
We planted those trees. Another group came for monitoring. That was 0 year. They gave us something little from those trees. So they say that the donors, they are just getting carbon. The trees are ours. They are not taking our land.
Over the years, Mutonyi acknowledged that she and her group, that has since grown to 200, have been receiving payments, albeit varying sums.
Now, like last year, they give money in shifts. Some people get money according to the trees which they planted. The donor gives us some money, like when you planted like 100 trees. When they come and they find it, those trees are there, they give you something. Then they go back. After some 2 years, again they come back and they give you something. That's why we grow these trees.
She was non-committal on disclosing the amounts. But according to her explanation and those of other residents talked to, the payments depend on the amount of carbon captured from a given acreage of the trees.
For us, we decided to keep these trees because we are benefiting in them. At first, we didn't have, you can't find me with a mango tree at my compound. But now, right now, I'm getting some mangoes. Even children from school eat mangoes from my trees. That's why I benefit from them. Even firewood, it was little to me. But when these trees grow up, I just cut the branches. Then the tree continues. Then after that, when it grows properly, you can cut timber and educate your children.
Like the Bobetie Carbon Farmers Association, there are several communities in this enclave who are delighted in the multipurpose venture of cash for tree planting. They mostly plant fruit trees such as mangoes, avocados, among others, which they harvest as they receive payments for carbon credits generated. For majority of the women-led households scattered across the sub-county, the money comes in handy for this and that.
When you look at from 2013-15 to now, these numbers of people have grown. We now have we are moving towards 5,000.
Mutoni's group was introduced to tree planting as part of the Trees for Global Benefit, a carbon offsetting program, a climate disasters mitigation and social and economic development initiative implemented by a local NGO based in Entebbe, EcoTrust. The Trees for Global Benefit itself was an offshoot of the Territorial Approach to Climate Change, or TACC, one of the first climate change adaptation projects generated by Uganda. The TACC, which mainly comprised planting trees on the fragile slopes to hold the soils compact, was funded through the UNDP.
We as the district and the department, we have not sat back to say, TACA went, EcoTrust came, and it should do their work. We have taken it as our project for our people because of the carbon credits these farmers receive. We have encouraged them, despite some challenges, to manage these trees, and indeed we are very, very successful.
The trees are for offsetting carbon emissions, for which then the farmers are paid. The scheme runs for 10 years. How it works, both the beneficiaries and the Mbale District Environment Officer, Charles Wekuwe, are fully aware. What they do not know and have never been told are the carbon offset computations resulting into how much is paid.
At first, people feared that maybe the project will take the land, but when they discovered that the project is only interested in trees and giving people carbon credits, also has helped us to easily manage and continue promoting the project. So, in that way, and also EcoTrust being so much on ground, for instance, last year, we received money for around 1,370 people, carbon farmers in Mbale district. We received the EcoTrust paid Mbale farmers 127 million.
According to a May 2022 report by EcoTrust, Mbale district, I quote, has consistently performed well in farmer recruitment for the past 3 years, given the fact that farmers in the area have the smallest land sizes. The farmers have small pieces of land, but through group recruitment, farmers have since joined the project in big numbers, end quote. Inversely, a November 2022 study titled Trees for Global Benefit Uganda, a case study on the failures of carbon offsetting, detailed that under the project, at least 15,000 farmer households across 14 districts have planted over 2.3 million trees as part of the Trees for Global Benefit since 2003, sequestering over 2 million tons of carbon dioxide. However, the report by the Global Forest Coalition notes that, I quote, beyond the fact that carbon offsetting is not the answer to climate change, these other important questions on justice, equity, and local economic, health, and social impacts of these projects require scrutiny. Discussions with community members in the districts of Hoima and Chikube revealed significant problems with the project that suggest it has failed to achieve its objectives and is causing more harm than benefit and must therefore be rethought, end quote.
The carbon credit is a new concept that many people have not yet understood how it works and how it operates. So under our previous project, we did some bit of studies around the viability of carbon credit in the Elgon. But because of the land tenure system, the fragmentation of land, it becomes very hard for farmers to be able to adopt carbon credit because you need a huge spans of land for communities to give into tree planting. Now in Bududa we don't have this kind of lands. People have small plots of land that they cultivate. But also if you look at the compensation that comes into a farmer, the opportunity cost of planting the trees, it may not necessarily be attractive to the farmer to forego cultivating his crop for his own home consumption and sell. So these are things that need to be reviewed so that the farmers see value in planting trees other than cultivating the crops. So then the cost will cover what the farmer would need to support his or her family.
So people who are involved in reducing emissions or capturing the excess carbon now can apply through a scheme. There are many schemes that you apply through. So if you are an organization A So you mobilize your community on the ground either to plant trees or to give them energy-saving stoves. Okay? Now, those actions help to reduce carbon emissions. So it is the reduced emissions is now converted into tons of carbon, not called the carbon dioxide equivalent, tons. So each ton is given a price. In other words, it is commoditized. So it's given a price which is traded. Now, you who is involved in activities and you now entered onto that platform, the trading platform, that is verified, okay, that indeed you captured the carbon, and it is this amount of carbon, and it is this value, okay? So you are paid that money, and you also have an obligation to pay the people who are on your platform, the ones who are actually generating the carbon reduction.
In Uganda, like across several developing countries, there is growing concern about the carbon markets. There are also concerns about the opaqueness of the market, which comprises buyers, sellers, brokers, and middlemen. Critics argue that there is a general lack of awareness of the carbon offset markets and how they work, and yet NGOs are signing up mostly impoverished communities on long-term tree planting schemes or for energy solutions such as lights and cooking stoves. However, there is hardly a register to track or take stock of such operations. There are also question marks on the methodologies used to compute the carbon credits. For instance, if a carbon credit fetches as high as $30, how much should go to the farmer? In the middle of this transaction paid from a Western capital is a list of brokers and middlemen. The Commissioner for Climate Change in the Ministry of Water and Environment, Margaret Mwewesa, told NTV of regulations in the office to address some of these gaps.
We are coming up with what we call the climate change mechanisms, which also includes carbon market or credit trade. So we are coming up with regulations to regulate carbon markets and trading in Uganda. This regulation is going to cause a platform. We want a very transparent platform and very so that the different players can come in. That's the kind of regulation we are developing as a country, where all players can come in and fit in properly. So it is the first of its kind for us, of course, as a country. And even these people, the NGOs, international NGOs, local NGOs that are going into this carbon trading already with our farmers, that is what we call the non-compliance. They are not under any regulation now. They will have to come under this regulation.
She also admitted that the trade is riddled with market imperfections.
Reason being, we want fair trade. We want fair trade for all of us. Because you find that in some instances, communities are being cheated. We have very many brokers. Brokers in the country where they are already doing trade with our farmers, with our communities. And our communities are not getting the worth of their effort because they are the owners of this carbon. They are the asset owners, the carbon asset owners.
Carbon markets refer to a set of systems that are regulated in different jurisdictions for trading greenhouse gas pollution rights. A May 2024 report titled Voluntary Carbon Markets in Africa, a deep dive into opportunities and challenges, detailed that carbon markets are organized into primary market involving transactions conducted within a formalized system and a secondary market which includes transactions conducted outside of these systems, typically through bilateral agreements. Anthony Wolimbwa, the National Coordinator for the Climate Action Network Uganda, says the concept remains largely opaque.
So the locals, the way they are ripped off, or the way they are likely to be ripped off, let me use that phrase, is that first of all, if there are no regulations, somebody is going to come, enter into an agreement with a smallholder farmer, okay, to grow maybe trees on his farm, on her farm, and he will tell you, I want 20 years. So you must not cut those trees. To some extent, please don't cut those trees. I'll keep paying you your money. Now the problem is, how much money are you giving this person? Are you able to compensate 1-2 million per acre per year, or you are giving the fellow less than 100,000? But you have a 20-year agreement. So now the farmer who is now trading this carbon is receiving very small amount of money, but sometimes is not able to do something else, may not be able to move to do some other activity, some other land use. Okay? Now that's the fear actually.
Voluntary carbon offset markets, reinforced by Article 6 of the 2015 Paris Agreement, is a growing business and lauded in some quarters as a new mechanism for climate change financing across the globe. Corporate companies, too, around the world are latching on strong under the cap and trade arrangement to overshoot their greenhouse emissions targets set by regulators and willing to pay fines or offset carbon elsewhere, particularly in poor countries. Critics argue that this allows developed countries to pay lip service to cutting net emissions while pushing poor countries in the global south not to modernize or undertake key development paths in order not to worsen the greenhouse emissions crisis.
Is that, say, a company in Europe producing steel can say, okay, maybe every year I emit about 1 million tons of carbon. Then the EU says, my friend, we are giving you a cap of 500,000 tons of carbon. You go above 500,000 tons of carbon, you must pay. So what do? They come to Africa and buy from you. Say, Fred, I am going to pay you this amount of money for you to capture my carbon. And then that carbon is transmitted the other side, equivalent. So when they prove that indeed a company X in Africa has done what they are supposed to do, cut off their carbon. So this company in Europe can now produce up to 1 million, knowing that somebody in Africa has captured for them. Now, that is a fundamentally serious problem.
Insiders attribute the fierce opposition against Uganda's $10 billion, equivalent to 36 trillion shillings, oil project in southwestern Uganda to this arrangement, strongly cloaked in the climate justice movement by the powerful climate lobby in western capitals. In essence, the environment lobby in Europe wants Uganda's oil to remain in the ground while European companies are on the drilling spree elsewhere. In terms of size, the carbon market size is said to be worth billions of dollars. As of 2022, the voluntary carbon trading market was said to be $2 billion or 7.4 trillion Uganda shillings, with potential to grow by over 15 times by 2030. However, due to the myriad of issues, including claims of human rights abuses, a May 2024 report by Ecosystem Marketplace that publishes carbon market trends, the market had tanked from $2 billion to $723 million, equivalent to 2.6 trillion shillings in 2023.
We want proper trade, we want a fair trade. If it is going to be on my land, I should get my portion properly. The broker doesn't take the bigger chunk and me, I take peanuts. That's what we really want, and we pray this regulation will regulate carbon trade properly in the country. We have so many people, international private investors who are coming into Uganda to do carbon trading, who want to do carbon trading. And we are telling them also that, we are coming up with regulations, but as we are coming up with the regulations, be prepared, do ABCD.
Middlemen can be NGOs, can be private sector people who are doing the brokerage. So now the regulations come in to protect this person who could be ripped off by entering into agreements that are not fair enough. Because the farmer has no capacity to know how much a ton of carbon is selling in Europe or in the Americas or in China, but is entering into a long-term agreement. So how do you protect this farmer? It's by putting in regulations.
Uganda's Water and Environment Minister Beatrice Sanywa told the Parliamentary Climate Change Committee on July 20, 2023, that Uganda is one of the carbon market frontrunners in Africa, with a total of over 30.6 million tons of carbon credits issued under the Clean Development Mechanism and Voluntary Carbon Market Standards, or CDM, from which methodologies for voluntary carbon market are derived. The CDM allows emission reduction projects in developing countries to earn certified emission reductions, CERs, each equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide. However, for Uganda, the opaqueness of the business and the fragmentation of the carbon market system leaves it subject to exploitation while offering minimal opportunities for diversification. While there is growing hype around voluntary carbon schemes in Africa, it is also becoming increasingly controversial as more Afrocentric researchers keep decampaigning it as another tool geared towards keeping the Global South in poverty. The idea that some money paid by the corporations for these carbon credits, or more accurately, permits to pollute, raises key questions such as, is it for the African people, the climate, or development?